Welcome to Village in Motion. I'm Clint Lambert. I'm the host today, and it is Friday, December 22nd, and we only have 3 nights left before Christmas. I hope all of you have done all your Christmas shopping and gotten everything done, and I hope that you've purchased some wine, beer, or spirits in that whole Christmas shopping list. This morning, we're going to be talking about those items, and we have with us this morning Jim Coulter, who is our regular, as you know, and he's our enophile in regards to wines and spirits. And we also have with us our new Associate Director of Dining Services, Jason Healey, who is an expert, also I understand, about wines and spirits and beers, and has a long history of dealing with those. And we're going to share some information with him, and he's going to share some with us.
Absolutely.
But glad to have both of you with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Clint. Thank you very much.
Good, good. And I see that you brought a bottle of, it looks like champagne.
Spanish cava.
Spanish
Yep.
cava, okay. And we're going to come back and talk about cava here in a
Yes,
second, okay?
I'd like to do
In regards
that.
to that. And Jason, I see that you brought 3 bottles with you this morning.
Yes, sir. I wanted to share. We are changing the wine program here at Green Springs.
Okay.
And so here you have the Cannon Road, which will kind of take on as a house wine or a first tier per the glass. The nice thing of switching to this is we're able to offer more varieties by the glass. We'll be able to have Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio, White Zinfandel, Sauvignon Blanc, Merlot, Cabernet, and Pinot Noir.
Oh, okay.
Now, for you champagne lovers out there, we are still keeping the smaller bottles of champagne, and so we'll have that available by the glass as well.
So you're saying that we can purchase all the wines by glass, except for champagne, that we can purchase a half bottle?
Yes, we would still serve it in the glass and stuff, but yeah, for pricing's sake. So those little bottles we are kind of moving away from just because they're not extremely popular in the restaurant industry. Pretty much airlines and kind of other operations like that use them, which means the popularity and demand's not there, so it's harder to find them, and then you don't have as many great options. So we found a really nice wine that we tasted at the Mix and Mingle, I believe, this summer, and went over very well, so we decided to bring that in.
Good, good. Now, will we still be able to purchase bottles of wine within the
Absolutely,
restaurants?
absolutely.
Okay.
And for 2018, we are leaving the pricing for, let's see if I have it here, pricing for bottles of wine the same. So if you're buying off this first tier here, it's $8 a bottle.
Okay.
If you're buying off something off of our second tier, we're looking at 12. Those are plus tax, but those are great value and a great deal, and especially with across the board, I think we've taken the wine program and kind of upgraded a little bit. So the ability to bring a better product in and pretty much keep those bottle prices the same are great. We are going to have to raise the glass price a little bit, just because if you didn't currently know, what we were selling it at was actually a little bit cheaper than what we were paying to bring it in. We lost about 3 cents a glass.
What's wrong with that?
It's against ABC policy. So luckily, draft beer kind of kept us in the good with ABC when they came in. But ultimately, we're going to be raising that price a little bit. And you'll see flyers and advertisements at all the places where you can purchase wine on Green Springs. And also, too, highly recommend, please ask your servers or bartenders if you could get a little sample to try it out.
Okay.
We want people to try and hopefully find a new favorite that they'll be able to get, whenever they want.
Good. I know in the past, and this is a couple of years ago, that the bottles were being sold for about $1 to $2 above cost. Is that still kind of the pattern? Or
Yeah, we're really between. It's about that, and that almost covers, because sometimes, if there's breakage, you kind of have to take that, and sometimes, someone might get a wine that's corked, and then we have to refund that, and it's kind of a process. But yeah, it's a very minimal increase compared to what we pay for it.
Okay. You just mentioned the word corked, and I know Jim and I just had some experience this week in regards to a corked bottle. Jim, would you explain what corked is?
Well, basically, a natural cork is the bark of a tree. And when they harvest the trees, what they do is they cut the outer bark off for the corks, and then more bark grows.
Right.
They put these in a chemical bath or boil them to kill any impurities and so forth in them. But being a natural product, and especially cork because it's so porous, sometimes there will be either some moisture will stay in there and the mold will start to develop,
Right.
or there'll be natural ingredients in there. And when you put this in a bottle of wine and lay it down on its side for 6 months or a year or 2 years, those things find that nice atmosphere in there is a great place for things to grow. And it used to be that the wine industry said about 1 bottle in 10, the cork had some taint on it, and there's a scientific name for whatever that is, but basically it smells like old socks or mold or wet newspapers.
And it is a horrible smell.
And if it's bad, and we opened a bottle the other night,
Yes.
and by the time I got the cork out of the bottle, I could tell it was no good. But sometimes it's very subtle. And if you have really nice taste buds or good olfactory senses, you can pick it up. Usually, if you taste the wine and smell the cork,
Right.
you'll get it off of one of them. And any reputable wine store or restaurant, if you tell them you think the wine is corked, because I've done this at restaurants,
Right.
and you tell the sommelier or the waiter that it's a bad bottle, it's corked. Usually, what they'll do is they'll take it back without giving you a hard time and say, do you want another bottle of the same wine or something else?
And that's kind of true of the wine stores also, right,
Yeah.
Jason? I mean, you've probably experienced that, where you've had customers bring back in bottles of wine, right?
Correct. One of the first restaurants I ever managed was a bistro on one side, but attached to it was actually a full retail wine shop. And with that, you would have the person come back, and it was a simple exchange. Sometimes you had to question it if about 80% of the bottle was drank. Trying to do the return, but for the most part, people would come in and say, the bottle was corked, and you move forward.
But you can really tell it though when you open the bottle, and as
Yeah.
Jim said, just getting the cork out, you can smell it when it's really, really gone.
If it's really bad, you can tell. If it's very subtle, sometimes if you just pour it in a glass and wait a couple of minutes, most of it'll dissipate. It depends, if you're at home and you're having guests and it's really bad, why hopefully you've got another bottle of wine. But it's not usually a problem. I said, and in the last 4 or 5 years, I've seen less and less in wine magazines
Right.
and so forth about it. I know a lot of them have gone to screw tops, like
Yeah.
we
Or
have here.
to artificial.
Or plastic corks,
Right.
which have their own problems, but most of the wines that I buy and most of the wines that people here at Green Spring should be drinking, in my opinion, are wines that are made for being drunk young.
Right.
So they're 2 or 3 years old at most, and most of the time. They won't have that problem, and a lot of them will have the plastic corks or screw tops.
You mentioned, lying a bottle on the side, when you purchase it. Should you rotate it? I mean, should you twist it like they do in the cellars?
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
If it's laying down, the cork, if the bottle's on its side, the cork is here, and the wine is in contact with it. And that's the only reason you lay it down, is to keep the cork moist so it doesn't dry out and let air get into the bottle.
Okay. Jason?
And that's pretty much true. It depends if you're keeping an older bottle. So like I have a couple Bordeaux's that are going on 15 years. So I do rotate those about every 6 months in my cellar. Also too, look at the angle. So different wine racks will have kind of different angles.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, if you're looking at a wine that's a year, 2 year old, I think you're fine. Also, too, the integrity of the cork, the wrapping on it as well. Some of it too is the bottle design. How much was it filled? How much air was left in it? That you want to kind of look at, and it depends. It really does. But for the most part, I kind of agree with what you're saying. I do have a couple older bottles, but for the most part, you want to be looking at that too. Really not really over 4 years old.
And so people who store wine in their refrigerator need to put it on the side as opposed to just sitting it in?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend storing it in the refrigerator, but if you're going to be serving wine like this weekend,
Right.
put it in the refrigerator a couple of days ahead of time. That's fine, and you can stand it up for a couple of days. If you have a wine cellar or a chiller that you put them in, they should be stored on their side. And it's not necessary for the screw tops, but if you got a wine cellar or a wine rack, usually that's the storage that's with it, and you pretty much have to do that anyway. And sometimes the screw tops will leak. I've taken a screw top back to Trader Joe's, and it's got wine dripping down the side. And they don't give you any trouble.
Okay. All right. So, make sure you get a good bottle of wine, right? Something that you want.
If you like it and want it, that's pretty much my definition of a good wine.
And you can afford it, right?
Yeah. Always, yeah.
In regards to the holidays are here, what's recommended? What should we be looking at, or what would you recommend that we look at?
Well, I think a lot of that goes to, when are you drinking it and what do you want? A prime example, I'll talk about my family, and for this holiday, we were chatting before the show. I got 15 people coming over, and somehow they all want something different. So with that, I'll have probably a crock pot with a mulled wine that for my wife, and I know my mother-in-law, because they are cold all the time, so they want something warm, nice, hot to drink. I know I have some, my brother and I will be drinking probably heavier reds, Zinfandels or Cabernets to go with a beef dish. So I'll drink that throughout. A mother and a grandmother who are not the biggest into wine, but they do love the bubbles of a Prosecco or a Cava, so we'll have that. And one of the things I always tell people too is, and it depends on your house and depends how many people you're having over, but this time of year, if you pay attention to the weatherman, I personally keep a lot of my whites outside because I have limitations on what I can put in the refrigerator. And if sometimes, if it works out, especially kind of the weather we got right now, you're hitting right at that point. I'll probably, 10, 11 o'clock, I'll put the wine outside. By 4 o'clock, it's going to be a real nice temperature, and I save that space to keep all that food in the fridge.
So the wine should be served, you mentioned temperature, wine should be served about 62 degrees approximately?
Somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees, usually.
Yeah.
Depends on the type of wine, depends on how cold or how hot your house is.
Right.
Yeah.
I like a frigid, ice-cold bottle of sparkling wine in the middle of summer, or in the winter if I was at my grandmother's house where she kept it 82 all the times. But and for me, because I'll drink just about anything, but I think it depends on what you're eating or drinking. I mean, if you're drinking it by itself, that's one thing.
Yeah.
If you're eating it with food, why, it's always nice to have a wine that the temperature and the type of wine goes with whatever you're drinking, and that's, they have TV series on television about this. It's a lot more than we could talk about here in a half hour.
I see that we've got a couple of wines showing up on the monitor. Charles Smith wines, and it looks like Gallo collection. Comments about the different companies that put wines out. Anything along those lines? Or which winery do you look at?
I recommend people that live in this area, if they're new to wine, go to a supermarket or go to a wine store like Total or Trader Joe's or someplace, and talk to the staff there. And a knowledgeable wine, Jason probably talked about this morning, but a knowledgeable wine salesman will ask you questions like, well, what kind of food do you like? Do you drink wine? What kind of wine do you like? And then they can recommend stuff. And it's good, as we were talking about returning stuff, and so it's good to build up a relationship with a store or it's better with a wine shop, because usually places like Total and Trader Joe's, they got different people working in there all the time. But if you've got a regular wine shop or a wine store, and I know there's a couple of them in the Northern Virginia area here that have been around a long time, you build up a rapport with them, and you get to be one of their regular customers. They know what your tastes are. Sometimes I had a friend that they would call him and say, we're getting a case of this in, and I can put 2 bottles aside for you if you want them, which is a great service.
So that's kind of like Calvert Woodley.
Yeah, Calvert Woodley, or the old Eagle Beverage down in D.C.
Right.
Yes. And there's, like I said, there's several I know that are mentioned in the newspaper. The Washington Post wine articles always says where they're available, and you see Arrow Wine in McLean, I think, is one.
Jason, you've worked in wine stores. You've managed a wine store. Do the salesmen get a commission typically, or are they just working for the store, or do they have favorites that they recommend? How do you know that what somebody's telling you is on the up and up, should I say?
All right. And that's a very good question. The majority that I'm aware of, there's really not commission based on the sales. It's more of an hourly paid position. The favorite side of it, you do. I think but that's also that person's taste profile. And so the same thing as like maybe a movie critic or something like that. If you've had a couple of the wines that they like, I do recommend following up and trying those other ones because you probably have the same taste profile.
Okay.
If, sometimes they'll tell you, they do get pushed a little bit for the new stuff that comes out.
Right.
I would always say push back and be like, well, if you want me to get it, can I sample it before I take it home? And I would agree, definitely. Anytime I've moved anywhere, I always try to find a local butcher and a local wine store because you can build that relationship. And like you said, the really good ones, they'll call you when specialties come in, or hey, we're only getting 2 cases of this, and I'd really recommend you'd probably like a bottle or 2. Okay. You can build those rapports.
Okay. I just noticed while we were talking that they put up on the monitor in regards to discounts on wines, and we get it in the paper all the time with the flyers of $15 off if you purchase X number, 15% off this, that, and the other. Are those pretty good deals?
Well, yeah. If you go to Total Wine and you pay $5.99 for a bottle of wine, and you go back in 3 weeks and you pay $5.99 for a bottle of wine, and you see a newspaper they got 10% off on wine, and you go over and you get that $5.99 bottle of wine for 59 cents less or whatever, then it's a good deal. If you don't want the wine that they're selling, it doesn't matter how much of a discount they give you.
Are they pushing older wines to get them out of the store, or is it just simply the fact of just a discount to get people in?
No, I know the Total Wine, their coupons are almost always for discounts off of, so 10% off or $15 off, and their only restriction is the price of the way. Usually theirs it says if it ends in a 7, there's no discount on it because that's already maximum discount. But most of the wines in their store don't end in 7. And you can go through like the Chardonnay aisle, and they got 150 different kinds of Chardonnay, and 20 or 5 or 30 of them end in 7, and you can pick from all the rest of them. So it's a way. It's like free money. If you're going shopping at Total or Trader Joe's or any place that's got coupons, if you're going to go there anyway and buy something, you might as well take the coupon and get some extra money off.
Yeah, I think there's 2 strategies to that. Like a Total Wine, they send those coupons out because, oh, yeah, I haven't been to Total Wine, let me go. And very rarely does the customer come in and buy that minimum to get that discount. They usually spend more. So that's the reason why they do that, and that works out really well. For like a Giant, or Safeway or something like that, when they're running a sale, it's usually for 2 reasons. One, it could be a product that is not very popular and it's taking shelf space up and they want to get rid of it. A lot of times, though, it's a new product, and they want to get you kind of hooked at that discount, and then you're going to start buying it at regular retail price because you've really liked it.
Okay.
So those are usually the strategies behind discounting a wine. But a lot of places, regardless, will give you a case discount. So just make sure that they'll let you do a mixed case, because if you were going to go in and buy 6 bottles, and like you said, and 2 weeks later go in and buy another 6, just buy it all at once and take that initial discount.
Okay. Because if it's a mixed case, then you can get the different kinds of wines, right? Where if it's not a mixed case, it's just the one kind of wine.
Correct.
And a case of wine has 12 bottles, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, unless you buy half gallons, why there's 6 of them instead of 12. But basically, yeah, it's the equivalent of usually 12. But they have half cases too that they package some stuff, and they box wines are different. But yeah, generally it's be 12 regular size bottles.
Okay. And there's no difference in taste with whether you get a half gallon or you get a 750 or.
They put the same wine in them, they tell you. But now, of course, with better wines. Not the kind I buy, but with good wines, if you like champagne, I know because that's something I've done a study of. You go to France and you taste wines, and if you go to a big restaurant or something, or they got a dinner, usually they'll be serving Magnums or Jeroboams, because the bigger bottles age more slowly because there's more wine for the same cork area and so forth. And they're supposed to last longer. Not around my house, but I mean, lots of places.
Well, you again mentioned champagne, and we mentioned Cava, we mentioned Prosecco. What's the difference?
You want to handle that?
Well, I think a lot of it, to be champagne, you need to come from that region of France. The process is very similar, but a lot of it is where you're coming from. So, and the grape blends can change a little bit. Overall, it's very detailed, or regions. If you look at your bourbon, what's a whiskey? A lot of it's just based on where it was made or the process. And then everyone kind of just, it's almost like branding for countries. Italy took over Prosecco, Spain took over Cava, and then France took over Champagne. Or if you're not from that region, they still try to sell it that way, even though it's not true, Champagne. But ultimately, I think it's very similar. And you just need to find the flavor profiles that you like and enjoy.
Yeah, I think for the most part, the sparkling wine manufacturers, especially in Champagne, they try to have a house style. So they try to blend their wine from year to year so it tastes pretty much the same. In California, a lot of the Champagne houses have open places in California. They try to stay true to the house style of the French, but California tastes are different and California grapes are different, so they tend to taste a little different. Better or worse is up to the consumer.
So really, rather than going in and asking for a champagne, it might be better to go in and ask for sparkling wine.
Yeah.
And then they can direct you which one might be more to your taste.
France has sparkling wines that don't come from Champagne, like Cremant de Bourgogne, which has its own slightly different blend of grapes sometimes. Sometimes they use the same grapes, but the region is different, the soil's different. And you may find that you prefer, like I prefer Bollinger Champagne. Somebody else prefers Roederer or whatever. It's all a matter of how your taste buds, handle that particular flavor. You get two people taste the same thing. One of them may love it and the other one hate it. It's all because it's green beans.
Right. And that's something we do have experience with around here, right?
Yeah.
Either mushy or overcooked.
Yeah. And, I always tell people, especially when they're getting into wine, a story of my mom, who is not a big wine drinker. So, one Christmas, she'll have this one wine. I love it. This is great. This is wonderful. The next year, I'll go out and buy 3 bottles of it. She'll take one sip. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. And the wine's the same. It's just her taste buds had changed, or she had a piece of chocolate before she drank the wine, and that changed the flavor. And the next year, she was eating an orange before she drank. It all depends. But, a lot of time. And I dealt with that in the wine shop. A lot of people are like, I don't like this wine. It doesn't taste the same way as it did 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And a lot of times I would ask, well, what were you eating? Well, I was eating blue cheese when I had it. Well, what were you eating this time? Oh, I was just having, some tortilla chips or something. It's gonna affect the wine taste differently.
And the fact of us here, because so many of us are on medications.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the medications, the effect it has on us and our taste buds and perceptions of things.
And I've found, my wife and I both have commented that our tastes have changed over the years as we age. Taste buds, she says her taste buds aren't as acute as they used. She used to be the one I would ask, is this wine corked, because she had such a good nose.
Right.
Half the size of mine, but good anyway. But now she can't pick those up anymore, and that's a problem that the dining services has to deal with. They get 2,000 people here, everybody whose tastes are changing with their medication as they age in place. It's a very challenging task.
Right. The other thing that I've noticed, and especially with sparklings, and noticed it just this week, is the fact of how Proseccos are different as far as the amount of bubbly or the taste on some of them compared to Cavas, compared to Champagnes. I mean, is there any way to say maybe which one's bubblier or which one has more body? Or?
I've got the perfect answer for you.
Taste them all.
Go out and buy 12 different bottles of all of them, and you and Vicki sit down and go through them, and get the white ones. So you don't have to worry about red.
Right.
See.
But because it's different. I mean, in regards to it, are those things that customers may complain about or be concerned about?
Short answer, yes. But I would say too, there's a lot also that goes into it. So there's the product itself, the bottle, how it was poured, what glass you're pouring it into. Certain glasswares will hold the bubbles more. And it really depends too on your taste. Like for me, I'm not a huge bubbly fan. I like them, but I'd much rather have a larger bubble and not as frequently. My wife would be the opposite. She wants to see the lines going up and back and forth, and that's what she prefers, that tickle on your nose. I found too, a lot of it, you can have 3 different cavas, like you said, and even those you're going to see a little bit difference of it. So once again, it goes to finding what you like, and the best way of doing that is trying. You mentioned earlier, there's certain brands that you look for.
Right.
For me, I actually spend more time finding regions that I like. If I like Pinot Noirs out of Russian River Valley in California, I'll try a lot of different places because the soil's the same, pretty much the same. They probably had the same rain content that year. There's going to be a lot of similarities, but each winemaker kind of puts their own spin on it to a degree. I had a wine once that was grown on the south side of the mountain, and then a vineyard was on the north side, and 2 Cabernets and very different,
Yes.
because of how the sun fell on the grapes.
And that makes a major difference. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the reasons for California having such good wines, right? It's because of the climate. Now you have warm days and cool nights in regards to it.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's different everywhere in the world. You can taste Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot from, as you know, because we've done this, taste a dozen different Merlots from 12 different countries, and they're all slightly different.
Yep.
And then you say, well, I like California.
Right.
So you go to you go to the store, you buy 3 bottles of California Merlot, and they all taste entirely different because one comes from Northern California, one from Southern California. One uses the grapes they grew on their property, so they vary from year to year. Another guy buys them all over the state and blends them together. You can't outsmart the industry. No. They're gonna challenge your palate, and you're gonna have to keep buying wines to try them.
And Santa Claus is coming.
Yes.
Yes.
And so get a good bottle of wine, chill it as appropriately if you need to chill it, and enjoy it, but enjoy it sensibly, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, folks, we're really glad to have the 2 of you here with us today, and thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and information with us. And we look forward to a continued growth in our wine program here at Green Spring.
Well, I like the bottle
Yes.
idea. I think that's going to be good for the By the Glass
Exactly.
program.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
it gives us more variety, and also too, something. We do these chef's dinners and we do these bigger wine dinners, but if a group of 7, 8, 10 people want to do kind of like their own wine dinner within one of our restaurants, please reach out to me or G in our catering department, and we'd like to work with you on that because cooking every day for everyone here is great, but it's nice to give these very talented chefs something different to do, and we can do some nice wine dinners like that. So reach out to us if you're interested in that.
Sounds good. Thanks again. Glad
All
to have
right.
both of you with us. Folks, don't go away. I've got some announcements here to share with you. And the very